All right, we'll go ahead and get started. People can join a few minutes late if they need to. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Claire. I'm the events coordinator here at Alertus, and I will be your moderator for today. In this webinar, Chris Weaver, National Sales Director in Global Capture, Key Verticals, and Demand Generation, will discuss how to avoid mistakes such as relying on a single channel, insufficient integration, lack of preparedness, confusing alerts, and scenario limitations. Our session today will be from 2 to 3. We'll begin with an in-depth presentation from Chris and then have the opportunity to engage with Chris to go over any questions that you guys may have. The webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you after today's session. All right, Chris, you can go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Claire. I do appreciate it, and welcome everyone. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on this. I don't think I'll take up the whole hour, so we'll definitely save some time for some questions. Make sure you write those down as we're going along. Hopefully, each and every one of you will, get some more knowledge on some of the mistakes that have been made out there with mass notifications and some of the things to avoid. And maybe you've actually come across some of your own that we don't cover here that you'd like to share with everyone. Please feel free to do so as well. Tell you a little bit about myself and Alertus before I get started. I've been in this industry for longer than I want to admit, but I date pre-2000 time. I'll leave it there. And so I've been doing it for a long time. I'm also a NICET level 4 in fire alarm, sprinkler and suppression systems. And mass notification systems actually falls under that. For those of you that are unfamiliar with NICET, it's the National Institute for the Certification of Engineering Technologies out of DC. And they certify various engineering technologies. 4 is the highest level you can go. Back in the early 2000s was whenever I got mine. And it allows me to do designs of these systems equal to that of a fire protection engineer. For instance, the mass notification falls under that. I asked the people at NICET this summer, I said, whenever I first got mine, there were less than 1,000 people who have one in the U.S. I said, how's that number now? They said it's still less than 1,000 people that have a NICET 4. So I head up some of our pre-sales engineering efforts over here at Alertus. Alertus has been in the mass notification business since the early 2000s as well, providing indoor and outdoor alerting for various different types of institutions. They kind of got their start with colleges and universities many years ago after there was a tornado at a local university here that killed a couple of people. Our CEO decided, you know what, I need to do something about that, and he actually created our flagship product called the Alert Beacon to help protect people from incidents like this. So mass notification has been in his heart as it has been in mine for many years. So I take these systems very, very seriously when looking at them. Much like a fire alarm system, we're in the business of trying to save lives, as many as we can. So we need to make sure that when we do implement these things, that we try to do it to the best of our ability. Many companies and institutions I talk to across the world, a lot of them, would love to have the perfect system, but, many of them have to deal with, like we all do, different budget constraints. But there's nothing wrong with looking at, building the perfect system a piece at a time, a phase at a time. And I've worked with a lot of fire marshals across the U.S. who've been very impressed with companies that have determined where they want to go with their mass notification system. And they put forth a multi-year program, a phased program to implement a system like that. You may find as we go through this that you have different various gaps in your system, things that maybe we can help you with, help you design the right and appropriate system for those areas. But again, keep those questions for the end. I'll try to answer as many of them as we can get to. I'll try to leave plenty of time for us. So clicking through here, the very first one right up top is relying on a single channel. And by that, I mean audible only or visual only, something like that. And this is where you kind of get into situations where, if you just provide audible notification, like a lot of facilities do, what about people that are hearing impaired? How are they going to know that there's something going on? I spoke with a person at one company not long ago, and I actually have a little bit of hearing loss myself. I kind of lost my high pitches, so sometimes I have to wear hearing aids myself. But we were talking about the need for visual notification as well to alert people that could be hearing impaired that may work for your organization. And he leaned over at me and he turned his ear over and he said, "Yeah, like me." And he had a hearing aid in. So exactly, we need to make sure that, we're trying to reach those people as well. So visual notification is very important. But, I've seen some situations too, especially like factories where, it's very high noise environments where they just provide visual notification only, and they're like, it's too loud for us to put any kind of audible notification in there. But that's not true. We can actually do something that's referred to in the code as narrowband signaling. Think of it as a situation where maybe you're at a bottling manufacturer, for instance, and there's a lot of high noise, but it's a lot of clanking, high pitches that are going on. What we do is we can actually do a frequency spectrum analysis of what are the predominant noise frequencies in that area. It might be over 100 decibels. It might be very loud. But what we can do is we can penetrate that spectrum with a non-dominant audio frequency. So if it's a lot of high frequencies, like a bottling company, we can actually overcome that at a lower decibel even with a low frequency that people can actually hear and understand. So there are ways to get around it. Designs that can help us overcome some of those challenges. So even in a high noise environment where you think visual only is effective, we can still penetrate it with some audio in a lot of cases. And you always want to deploy something that's considered a multi-channel. Audible and visual are great, but there's also some other means of maybe reaching people in other methods. What I like to refer to is more like personal alerting, reaching people on their personal devices. It's another layer of mass notification. In the code book, they refer to it as DRMNS, Distributed Recipient Mass Notification System. Things like SMS text messaging, pop-up alerts on computers, things of that nature, people's personal devices, alerts on tablets, or Chrome tablets and iPads, and things like that. So we look at mass notification from a layered approach, trying to reach people in any kind of possible method that we can reach them as quickly as we can reach them, because as we've seen in the shooting incidents just recently, even the one over in Australia that just happened, how much time did a lot of these people get? Most of them heard the gunshots and they just started running. And some people probably didn't have any idea what was going on. We actually sell beach notification systems, believe it or not, that can be activated and provide, alerts all up and down beaches for various different types of warnings, not just a shooter on the beach. That's an odd one that happened. But yeah, trying to reach people's devices, different methods, different ways to try to get the information out. And even as things change, sometimes you want to get different types of alerts out to people. As the situation changes, you need to have a system that's flexible so you can send out, some more detailed information on how people should respond. So next up is lack of staff training, or not training the appropriate staff on the procedures and how to initiate them. We need to make sure that, the correct personnel are trained on exactly how they're supposed to activate the system. And they need to be trained to operate the system on a regular basis. So when the time does come, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. I'm not going to name who it is, but I actually had a facility that I sold a system to. many years ago, and they had a tornado at their site, and the person wasn't really trained very effectively on the system and what to do, and there were some buttons that were pre-programmed for them to push to activate the system. But instead of doing that, they went over and picked up the microphone, and in one sentence and one sentence only said that there was a tornado in the area, take shelter immediately. That was it. And that came out of the high-powered speaker arrays, much like the one you see behind me here. So needless to say, I got a call out that the system wasn't working as they expected, and I went out and started asking some questions and found out that the person that operated the system didn't know what they were doing, wasn't trained effectively, and when the time did come, and she said, I was just nervous. I didn't know what to do. She was frantic, and she said the only thing I knew to do was grab that microphone and say something. And what she did, she didn't do what she was supposed to do, which was push the button that had a pre-recorded message and tone that was generated to play multiple times. What happened was the people at that site, many of them were inside because it was a storm, heard something but could not hear or understand what was going on at all. So it was a very ineffective alert that was given, and could have cost a lot of lives simply because there was a lack of training done with the staff. So very, very important that staff training gets conducted on a regular basis. And they need to understand the system. Some places have different tones. They have different strobe colors that mean different things. Although I recommend staying away from various tones and colors, and we'll talk about that a little later. But they can get confusing, and it's very important to keep the messages clear and concise, and the alerting very clear and concise. And they need to know what to do. Once these systems are activated, well, what do I do next? So there's a lot of training that needs to be involved with that. And one of the things that you'll find out there is that actually OSHA actually has a requirement for the emergency personnel to be trained, and for you to have emergency plans in place, so you know exactly what's going to happen when any kind of emergency situation that pops up at your facility occurs. Here's another one I run into very frequently, unfortunately, is insufficient testing. Very few people in facilities test their system, whether it be an indoor system or an outdoor alerting system, or even both. A lot of times we have customers that have implemented these systems, and they might be even 10 years old and have never really done any kind of regular testing on them, make sure that they're performing the way that they were intended, doing health checks on them, making sure that if they have batteries in them for backup, that they're of sufficient size, and that they're not depleted. And so there's a lot of different things that you can check on a system. If we look in the NFPA 72, I believe it's chapter 14, it tells us a bunch of different types of tests and inspections that we must perform on these types of systems. And a lot of facilities don't realize that, there's actually a requirement by NFPA that you have to perform an annual test and inspection of your mass notification system. Or as it's referred to in chapter 24 of the NFPA 72, your emergency communication system. So much like you do your testing and inspection on your fire alarm system every year, per NFPA, the same chapter as it discusses fire alarm, it also discusses that you have to do these systems as well. The problem is a lot of fire marshals out there don't say anything about it unless they recognize that you do have an emergency communication system in place. Then they may ask you for your test and inspection documents. If you don't have your test inspection documents, they could do the same as they do with you in fire. They can fine you or shut you down until you get your system tested and inspected. So I recommend, whether you choose Alertus or somebody else, that you please perform those annual test and inspects on your system. We leave behind with you after we're done with ours the test inspection documents that you can give to your fire marshal whenever he comes around to do his annual check at your facility. So be sure to provide those documents to him as well so that he knows that you perform all the required NFPA 72 checks on your system. This just makes sure that your system is functional. It's kind of like some of us that have lived in some of those states that have to go through your inspection on your car and you make sure your turn signals work and your tires aren't flat and all that other good stuff. The same thing goes with this. You need to do regular tests and checks on it, and the code actually requires that we have to perform them. I'd venture to say, a lot of you on this call, if not every one of you, probably don't do those regular tests and inspections on your system. So feel free to reach out to us and let us help you out with that. Next up, number 4, insufficient integration. A lot of people forget about this. You put in a mass notification system, and a lot of times it doesn't integrate with anything. It's just its own standalone system. It just does announcements or flashes lights out of it, or puts text up on the screen like you see our alert beacon here. But you forget to integrate with other things. For instance, like Brown University, had they had a system in place that they activated, they could have done things like integrate with their access control system and automatically lock doors down, so there's no entrance into a building, even if you have a card. The building is in lockdown. Nobody can get in there, except for maybe an individual or two at the campus with administrative capabilities. So completely locking down a building to prevent further ingress by a shooter, for instance, is a good reason to integrate with access control systems. Alertus integrates with a lot of different systems, Genetec being one of the most popular. We've got a direct API integration with Genetec, so we can lock and unlock individual doors should we choose to, or an entire campus if we wanted to. So very important to look at integrations with systems like that. Could mean saving many lives just because you decided to make that choice of doing that one single integration with an access control system, which in most cases is very minor in cost. Next one, security and fire alarm integration. Things like CCTV, being able to integrate and look and verify, messages have been activated. Or we have cameras now that do a lot of AI detection, such as gun detection or gunshot detection, some of the audible detection. So now we can have these CCTV systems or an intrusion detection system send us triggers to have us automatically activate or do a pop-up dialog box at your main computer console, letting you know, that the system was activated, and then give you the choice to continue to further activate the system and send out notifications to people and maybe do a lockdown or something like that. So CCTV, gunshot detection, gun detection. We're even doing some things with like flood detection, like out in Texas and the Carolinas, where we've had floods in different areas. There's some flood sensors that are in various areas, as well as a lot of different types of camera analytics that are done. Even camera analytics for fire. The cameras can now detect if there's a fire or if there's smoke in an area, and how much obscuration it is, and it can send us alarms and let us know that something's going on there too. So integrating with these systems is very important, and integrating with a fire alarm system is tremendously important. And I want to pause on that one for a little bit and kind of discuss a couple of things with fire alarm integration. since fire is kind of where I grew up at years and years ago, that's where I really initially got my start at. But with fire alarm systems, it started many years ago in what's called the UFC code, or the Unified Facilities Criteria 04-021-01. And in there, one of the things it talks about is if the mass notification is installed, it shall integrate with fire alarm system. And the integration that they're looking for is, well, if the fire alarm system is activated, and now suddenly the mass notification system is activated, the mass notification system shall override the fire alarm system. Now, when that originally came out, a lot of those of us in the fire industry were always like, oh, fire alarm always takes precedent over everything except for a duress button on a security system. So this was a bit of a shock to the fire industry whenever this first popped out. And in 2010, it popped out in the NFPA 72 code as well, about integrating with fire alarm systems. This is a must-do. If you haven't done it, I would highly recommend that you start to implement that integration as soon as possible. And here's one of the reasons why. We've had a couple situations across the U.S. where we've had bad actors that have pulled pull stations and were waiting outside with guns to shoot people as they were leaving the building. And a lot of times too, people don't know what else to do whenever there's an emergency that's going on, how to let everybody know. So a lot of people pull stations when that might not be the right thing to do. You might need to be taking shelter in place somewhere and running and hiding. And so what we do with mass notifications today is we integrate with the fire alarm system where if we're activated, we let the fire alarm system know, and it's typically by a simple contact closure. And the fire alarm system can monitor for our contact closure being given to it, kind of like flipping a switch on. And then through programming inside the fire alarm panel can now be programmed to disable all notification devices if it receives a trigger notification from the mass notification system. So now the fire alarm system turns off its fire alarm notification telling you to evacuate a building, which is very important. Not only should you respond the correct way in case it were a take shelter in place, but now you don't have two competing systems going off at the same time. You don't have one system yelling at you to shelter in place and another system yelling at you to evacuate the building. Now you get really confused. What do I do? Where do I go? So the last thing you want is to have people confused on what to do during an emergency situation. Now, I like to take things a bit of a step further in the code, and one thing that I recommend with the fire alarm integration is allowing the fire alarm system to be reactivated. And you might ask, why would you do that? And I would only allow that in certain situations where there was an automatic detection of a fire. An automatic detection by means of things like flow of water through a sprinkler pipe. All fire alarm systems, if there's a sprinkler system in the building, are monitoring the status of that sprinkler system. And they can monitor the status of flow of water through it. Also, maybe monitoring something like a heat detector, if it were to go into alarm, or smoke detector. You can also do cross zoning, where it's going to require at least two devices before it triggers it into an alarm condition. These fire alarm panels can be programmed to do that. So these, again, are automatic detection. So I say in situations like that, you have a fire. You have a real fire, and the last thing you want are for people to stay in and remain in that building if there's a fire. So in that situation, the fire alarm should be programmed to provide a trigger back to the mass notification system and say, hey, I've got a real fire now. We need to evacuate these people out of the building. Either the mass notification system can give the announcement, or the mass notification system can shut down and allow the fire alarm system to give the announcement to evacuate. I hope that makes sense for a lot of people. I know it can kind of get a little bit confusing, but fire alarm integration, like I said initially, is very, very important. We all need to look at how we do those specifically. But those are a couple different methods of integration, and ones that I highly, highly recommend. If you don't get anything out of any of the rest of these I'll talk about today, definitely do the fire alarm integration. I think that's probably one of the more important things to do. The fire alarm, and probably integrate with your access control system if you have one to do a lockdown. Those two integrations probably would save the most lives of anybody out of doing integrations. Something else I want to talk about too, non-compliant systems. We run into these a lot. A lot of times we're asked to design a non-compliant system. We can, whatever the customer wants, but we will let you know specifically what the codes and requirements are. It doesn't mean that you have to adhere to it. You can put in whatever you want. We see a lot of customers that do that. But the reason they do it is usually because of budget constraints. I can't tell you how many other customers I've talked to where we've helped them put together a fully compliant design that's phased in over multi-years. Even I did one not long ago that's phased in over 5 years. They took the drawings and of the entire design where they want to get to ultimately with their mass notification system, and they handed it over to their fire marshal. And I had a meeting with them and their fire marshal too. And the fire marshal was just so thankful that they were putting this together and trying to get to a fully compliant system. He's fine with it. He understands budget constraints, but he also doesn't like seeing various organizations that just stick one thing in or one channel of communication, thinking that they're done, and leaving it at that. He was really proud to see that this company was really looking at putting in a fully compliant system across all the different layers of trying to notify their employees. Now, there's a lot of different codes and mandates that you need to be aware of out there, and failing to adhere to them can put you in jeopardy liability-wise. Can provide safety issues to people. For instance, a hearing impaired person not having a clue what to do and end up getting hurt or killed. And of course, very hefty fines that can follow from these as well. If you choose to not go down the compliant road. NFPA 72, we talked about earlier. Also, International Fire Code and International Building Code, UL requirements for the equipment. I'll give you a kind of a quick understanding of all of these different types of things. NFPA 72 basically states if you're going to put something in, then we want you to follow these guidelines as you put it in. This is how loud it should be. This is how bright the visual device needs to be. And these are the areas where these devices need to be placed. That's what NFPA 72 tells us. And it also gets into, what you do after you have a system in place, such as the regular maintenance and testing and inspections on them. OSHA 1910.165 mandates that every employer shall have an employee alarm system in all areas where there are greater than 10 employees, such as a large conference room, for instance, hallways, outdoors. If you have a lot of outdoor activity and more than 10 employees are working in that outdoor area. Per OSHA, you shall have an employee alarm system to cover those areas for any kind of emergency that may happen. I'll give you another instance. I've done this a long time, and I've seen it all pretty much. I had a wastewater treatment plant, and I won't say who or where, but they had been in operation since the early 1960s. Called me up and said, we need your assistance designing an OSHA compliant system. I said, what happened? They said, well, we have this stream that runs along our boundaries of our treatment plant, and our treatment plant's fenced in. Nobody can get in, but people from time to time go fishing up and down the stream. Well, they had a tanker car full of chlorine that was on their site in the fenced-in area, but it started leaking chlorine gas from it. There were a couple people that were fishing down the stream and got inhalation injuries, had to go to the hospital. And OSHA comes out to do their investigation. They're like, not only should you have provided some sort of community warning, you don't have anything to notify your employees either. They barely had a fire alarm system in place. So they fined them, I think it was a couple $100,000 just because they didn't have a system in place. And they asked, if they could use some of the fine towards their system. And of course, OSHA said, no, we're keeping that money. And so they were forced to put in a fully compliant system, both indoors, outdoors, and to alert the community. And that was at a wastewater treatment plant. Again, had been in operation since the early 1960s, didn't even know that they had to have one. And most facilities and companies don't realize that they have to comply with OSHA either until somebody gets hurt or killed, and OSHA comes out looking at how they can fine you and collect some money out of it. So I encourage you, to look at this requirement. We even have some brochures on it, I think, that are available for you as well. Next up is International Fire Code, which also goes along with the International Building Code and International Code Council. In the International Fire Code and also in NFPA 101, these two dictate what types of facilities are required to have an emergency communication system or mass notification system. Typically, you're going to run into facilities like educational facilities with a decently high occupant volume in them. And then you're going to run into the other types of facilities like a liquid nitrogen gas storage facility or plants that have different types of hazardous chemicals. If they put in new buildings and things, they're going to be required to have these types of systems in place to notify the employees. So International Fire Code and NFPA 101 are the two codes that dictate who has to have a system. And NFPA 72 says, well, if you have to have a system, well, this is how you should put it in place. And by the way, OSHA, I guess, is one of those two, but they basically say every business has to have one. Even like a Walmart, for instance, you walk into Walmart, per OSHA, Walmart's required to have an employee alarm system in place. But, talking about these different types of systems and deploying them per code, then you start getting into, some other compliance that you have to look at. ADA being a big one, especially in areas, where employers hire people that could be disabled or hearing impaired. If you serve the public in any kind of way, you're going to be required to not only put in the handicap parking spaces, but also visual notification for the hearing impaired. And you might also be required to put in some tactile notification also to come into ADA compliance. But ADA, for the most part, what they have said for these types of systems, they're referring back to NFPA 72. They're like, if you put it in the way NFPA 72 asks you to put it in, then you're going to comply with us. So NFPA 72 is really our big guidebook for this. And for those of you that want to really look and take a deep dive into NFPA 72, I encourage you get the edition from 2010 to later, and it'll have in it a chapter 24 called Emergency Communication System. That's the one I recommend you do a dive on and understand how these systems are supposed to go in. Prior to 2010, we didn't really have any code requirements on mass notification systems. It kind of said, yeah, you can use these fire alarm speakers for other things. That's fine. You can even play background music out of them. It didn't really say much about it at all. But in 2007, Virginia Tech happened, and everybody just started coming out of the woodworks trying to sell mass notification systems, or here's a text messaging system, or here's a sounder, or here's a bunch of speakers. Missing the visual notification piece. And they're selling them left and right. They still do today, even after that incident. They're just trying to sell whatever they can sell you, and they're forgetting the piece about NFPA compliance. One of the things NFPA states is that, you know what, the wiring to these devices needs to be supervised. I need to know, is this system going to work when it's activated or not? The reason they ask that is because we've actually had situations in the past on fire alarm systems where arsonists have physically cut the wires before setting fires to facilities in attempts to not set off the fire alarm systems, notification devices. Same thing here, are you using a regular PA system? Are you monitoring the integrity of that wiring if somebody were to cut it? Is that PA system your mass notification system? Is it audible only? Is it going to work the way as NFPA has intended? So these are some of the questions you might want to ask. Do I really have a compliance system? Or is this just what I refer to as ancillary notification? So you might want to ask some of those hard questions. So next up, number 7, poor placement. Not putting in, display signs, for instance, in the right area where you can see them. And believe it or not, I've seen these mounted way high in the sky before, and people think that, everybody's going to see it. Same thing with speakers. The further away you place your speaker, even if you're sticking it up in the ceiling, the quieter it's going to be by the time the audio reaches you. And what if you're working in a high noise environment? Do you know how many dB above ambient you're supposed to provide? NFPA 72 is going to require 10 dB for private mode and 15 dB for public mode above ambient. And then we have to take in the consideration other things, like you see these guys in this illustration wearing hearing protection. How much is that knocking down the audible level of the speaker that may be presenting them with an emergency message? So a lot of things that have to be taken in consideration. One of the things that me and my team over here at Alertus do, we look at all those different factors. What's the best way, best placement? And, we have some customers that are like, well, you guys sell a really high power speaker arrays. Can't you just put one of those up in the middle of our building? And that's not always the right answer because like a large warehouse, for instance, that doesn't have a lot on the floor or the walls. Sound travels much like a tennis ball. The harder you throw it, the more it's going to bounce. The harder you throw sound, the louder you throw sound at a flat surface, the more it's going to bounce off of that flat surface. I've illustrated to customers before where I put up a really loud speaker and activated it, and it sounded like Charlie Brown's Teacher. And you couldn't understand it at all. And I said, let's just look at this same speaker in the same location at a lower power, and a much lower power. And I turned it down, and lo and behold, you could actually understand what was being broadcast out of it because it wasn't bouncing everywhere. So these are a lot of things we take into consideration whenever assisting our customers with designs of their systems as well. Making sure we get things at the right height. Making sure that, visual notification, if we're using strobes, much like are used on fire alarm systems, that they're bright enough to capture your attention. NFPA 72, if you look in the appendix of that code, it requires that notification devices and be acceptable by ADA must provide a 0.0375 lumens per square feet. So there's a calculation that we can actually run to make a determination on if the visual notification is producing enough lumens per square feet to meet those ADA and NFPA 72 requirements. So again, we can help you out with those if you choose. Number 8, no predefined templates. This is very important. You need to sit down, just like OSHA tells us, we have to have an emergency plan in place, and we have to know what happens if this emergency scenario occurs. If it's an active shooter, what do I do? If it's a tornado warning, what do I do? So we can help you prepare, a library of templates, including what should be said and how people should respond to it. Those are probably some of the most important things to think of, when you're putting together your emergency notification. I recommend that you do a pre-alert tone. This captures someone's attention. It can be whatever tone you choose. Some companies have different tones for different types of emergencies, and you can still use those different tones for different types of emergencies. But I recommend pre-alert tones be used to capture someone's attention. If you hear some kind of loud siren or tone beeping at you, you're probably going to stop your conversation that you're having with somebody over the phone or in person and stop and listen at what's going on. And then after that tone has completed, then you provide what the emergency is and how you should respond. So you're giving clear directions to people. This incident is a tornado warning, and you should seek shelter immediately in one of the approved tornado warning shelters. And you can provide the same messaging, across other different types of media, text message, a pop-up alert on a computer, something like that. But these things need to be predetermined, not thought of on the fly. Because just like that one situation where that lady kind of panicked and she just grabbed the microphone for a few seconds, people panic during these emergency situations. They don't know what to do. I had one person was talking to me about a medical situation that they had, and they asked this one person to dial 911, and she just froze. She couldn't do anything. And a lot of people do that. They panic in these emergency situations. So we're trying to take away as much stress from the person and make this as simple as possible for them. We have what you see here on the right, what's called our rapid response console, which just has some predefined single button clicks. You just look at the one that fits your situation and you push the button. It's going to ask you to confirm because we don't want it to just go off of one button click. So you confirm, are you sure? And then it activates the system. So it's very intuitive. You don't want people trying to think, what do I have to do? What page do I have to navigate to do this? Make it very simple for them. We've got one university that does very simple row of push buttons that says what they are above them. And they just hit those push buttons. And I recommend the same thing. Make it very simple, make it predefined so that people don't panic during the emergency situation. Number 9, unclear and confusing alerts. And we kind of talked about this a little bit. Using a pre-alert tone in the beginning of the message to attract the attention of the listener. Clearly state the emergency and then how they should respond to it. So this is very important as well. Make sure that your messages that go out are very clear. Everybody wants to know what's going on. Let them know what's happening and let them know how they're expected to respond. Evacuate to the north. There's a chemical leak. Evacuate to the north of the facility, or something like that. So make sure that you get this information out very clear. And very last, and then we're going to close it up for about 15 minutes of questions. Hopefully I've left enough time for you guys. Limited scenarios. System only supports, a limited number of scenarios. What happens if, you have different things that could go on. Different types of catastrophes. We talked about chemical spills, we talked about tornadoes, we talked about shooters. What are all the different things that could happen? Have you gone through those, and does your system have the flexibility for doing all these different types of alarms? And also, I know we all have to live within confined budget constraints, but maybe you look at a system that is flexible enough so that you can use it for more than just emergency alerting. Things like shift changes, or other types of announcements out of these systems. I've seen some of our customers utilize some indoor speakers of ours for white noise, for security purposes. You could definitely do things like that with them as well. So think about other things that you could utilize, these types of systems to really maximize your return on the investment for it. I know that some of them can get very, very expensive, but if you can get some additional usage out of it as well, even just general paging announcements out of them, zonable paging in certain areas may help you gather some additional ROI on the spending of the system. Well, I'm going to cut it off right there. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this session. I hope that you've been able to glean some more knowledge for some of you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Claire, to see if we have any questions that are coming in from some of our customers out there and what they may have.
Thanks, Chris. We can give a few minutes to let people add any questions to the chat if they have any. Just give it a few minutes.
Sure, thank.
We got a question, but it's just about will the slide deck be available and can it be sent out? The recording of this webinar will be sent out. Chris could probably send the presentation if you needed it.
Absolutely. We'll give you a PDF version of that if that's okay.
Another question, if we have an existing paging system in place, a QSC, can we integrate it into solution into this?
Good question. We get this a lot of times, and we have a couple scenarios that we have to look at with it. Can we use it? Absolutely. We like to leverage existing assets first, but we need to make sure that if we are leveraging something like that, the local authorities having jurisdiction, like your local fire marshal, understands that we're trying to start there. One of the reasons we don't like to rely on a paging system is because you cannot monitor the wiring of the cables running from the system to each and every speaker. So can somebody cut the wiring? Absolutely. Can you use it to start with? Absolutely. We encourage you to. We have some equipment that we utilize to integrate with a lot of paging systems, kind of like we're a microphone. We provide it with a contact closure, like pushing the button on a microphone or flipping the switch on a handheld microphone. And then that opens up the audio channel for us to push audio into that paging system. So can we use it? Absolutely. It's a great start. I wouldn't recommend on stopping there, though. You can use it until you grow a compliant system. Good question.
All right, I think that concludes the Q&A section of this webinar, unless anyone has any last minute ones. But thanks again, Chris, and thanks to everyone for joining. If you guys have questions or need additional information, please feel free to email us at events@alertus.com, and we will be happy to assist you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.